Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I'm going to talk this evening about meditation, in particular to discuss various kinds of meditation. First of all, some general words about meditation in general. It's a practice that we do. There's a paradox involved in that it is in some ways, superficially at least, it's a very artificial kind of activity. We're first of all setting the external factors to as conducive condition as is possible, recognizing there is no perfection in this world. We still try and seek out a quiet place and try and reduce our activity and reduce our external stimulus to enable the mind to go inwards. And physically we try and do as least as possible. We just sit and walk. So it's very, very minimalist activity compared to the general course of our lives. It's an artificial constraint on the being. But the paradox is that by taking up this artificial kind of activity, we're accessing a more natural state of mind. We're clearing away the debris and the clouds and the smoke and accessing the mind in its true nature. Meditation is a skill to be learnt. It involves practice, just like any other skill. You get better by doing it and by paying attention to the results and paying attention to the states of mind induced by the different practices. And I'm going to talk about various kinds of meditation. And first of all, kind of a general note that as a skill to be learned, one of the aspects is trying to seek a middle path, as in so much in the Buddhist Dhamma, is the middle way, the middle path, between the extreme of indiscipline, kind of a loosey-goosey approach, just trying to be generally aware without any structure or method or technique. And some people do that. They just try and open their mind in a vague sort of way. It can actually feel good, but doesn't really go anywhere. It's not very conducive. It doesn't lead into any higher states of consciousness or deeper awareness. The other extreme to be avoided, and some people do this, they fall into a mechanical, dogmatic adherence to technique. You learn a method of meditation and you follow it mechanically. And this is really the meaning of Silabata Paramasa, the fetter of what in English is standard translation is rite and ritual clinging, which is not a very good translation. It's neither literal nor is it really pointing to the correct place, but it's adherence to a mechanical approach. doing things by the book, so to speak, by rote. So there's all manner of different kinds of meditation actually out there, and they have different effects, different results, and some of them are suitable for some personality types and not for others. And some of them are useful at some time and might be less useful at another time, at another stage in your practice. We often talk about a general family division between samatha and vipassana, and that has a lot of merit as a classification tool, but there are practices you can do that don't really fall into either camp or straddle both camps. But the backbone of our practice in Theravada tradition is some form of samatha, some form of vipassana. Those two are very important. Samatha is tranquility meditation. It's sometimes misleadingly called in English concentration meditation. I don't like that term, but you'll see it often, so I mention it. It's a meditation that primarily develops the quality of samadhi. And samadhi is the word that's been translated as concentration, but that's a very poor translation. It's actually very misleading, and it will impair your practice if you rely on that as a definition. It's actually defined as non-wavering or stability, stillness of mind. And what this means is that during a samatha meditation, the mind takes a single object, which is initially chosen arbitrarily by the meditator, and it's an object. In a pure samatha meditation, it's an object confined to a single sense space. So we commonly do mindfulness of breathing, where the sense base is the sense of touch. But there are also meditations using the visual sense, they call kasina meditations, where you use an external object to focus on. And the Suddhimagga lists 10 of these. Some of them are colored discs, red, blue, yellow, white. You have a colored disc that you actually have a physical object made of wood or cardboard or whatever, and set it up in front of you and use that as a focus of meditation until you can mentally visualize the object. Or the 4 elements, there's earth kasina, water kasina, wind kasina, fire kasina. Actually, wind kasina, I think, replace it with space kasina. Meditate on an empty space. So these are, using the visual sense. There's also the possibility of using the hearing sense. This is something Ajahn Sumedho talks about a lot, is meditating on the internal sound. There's an internal sound that if you listen for it, it's there all the time. A kind of a buzzing sound. And depending on your taste, as Ajahn Sumedho says, you don't have to rely on any theory about where it comes from. Depending on your taste, you could say it's vibration in the muscles of the ear, or you could believe it's the music of the spheres, the cosmic sound. It doesn't matter, but it's a sound that's there all the time. And there's also, related to that, would be the use of mantra, repetition of a simple phrase over and over. In the Thai forest tradition, they often use Buddho, and they link it with the breath, and Bu on the in-breath, Do on the out-breath. Other traditions of Buddhism make extensive use of mantra. Tibetan tradition uses mantra a lot. But in all these kind of different practices, you make a deliberate choice at the outset. I'm going to focus my attention on the breath, or on the red kasina, or on the internal sound, and you pay attention to that. And you try and stabilize the mind on that. You try and fill the mind with that object. And it's very important that you do not force or narrow the mind, constrict the mind onto the object. Now, this is where the name concentration becomes misleading, because I've seen it too many times. People try and force their mind onto the object. They try and narrow the focus down onto the object, and that's the wrong approach. The approach is to have a broad, wide open mind, but a still mind. So all this vast expanse of the mind is filled with a single object of contemplation, the breath, or whatever it may be. This is also the meaning of the jhana factor ekagata, which could be translated as gone to unity. The ordinary mind is distracted, it's jumping from object to object like a monkey in the treetops. But the mind with samadhi is still like a rock, like the rock of Gibraltar. It just sits there, filled with a single object. It's very peaceful, very pleasant and expansive. It's not moving. And then the chitta is unobstructed. The chitta is experiencing this singleness of mind without being distracted. So one of the skills that is needed for any kind of progress in samatha meditation is the skill of non-attention. You have to learn to disregard other objects that impinge on the mind and not take any interest in them. Let them fade by non-attention. This is internal objects like ideas or memories, external objects like sounds or sensations elsewhere in the body. To learn to disregard them, the skill of non-attention. Vipassana meditation is otherwise. It requires a different set of skills. The essence of Vipassana is paying momentary, sharp attention to each object that arises in the field of awareness. And the skill to be mastered is twofold. On the one hand, not to miss anything, and the other hand, not to hold on to anything. According to the theory, the Abhidhamma theory, at each moment, the mind is taking an object. There's conscious awareness and there's the object. And this is an ongoing process. And this continues through your life whether you're meditating or not. There's an object arising in mind knowing the object. And mostly for the ordinary mind, this is muddled, confused, barely conscious. But we're trying to wake up. So the Vipassana, which means clear seeing, Vipassana is an approach that tries to make this process conscious, fully awake, fully aware of each moment. At this moment, there's some specific object, and it's the task to know it, to be present with it. But to hold it lightly, not to grasp, so it just passes through. I'm not even really fond of the phrase letting go, which you often hear, because that letting go implies you've held it. You hold it to let it go. You shouldn't hold anything. You should just have the mind in this fluid state where the objects are passing through. Knowing each object singularly, sharply, crisply, quickly. No? The mind moves very quickly, and you're trying to get the awareness to catch up with that stream of objects and notice the objects as they arise and pass away, moment by moment. One of the important skills here is a certain type of equanimity. Equanimity is the backbone of Vipassana. It's a very important quality, and the specific type of equanimity is called Tatra Majjhatthata, which is translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi and others. I think he originated the translation as specific neutrality, which is very accurate in describing what you should be doing. The literal breakdown of the word would yield being in the middle about that. So equanimity is being in the middle. You're not moved to either attraction or revulsion, to fear or fascination. You're in the middle. You're calm, clear, collected. No? But it's not just a general state of mind. It's a specific state of mind. You're in the middle about that. Tatra. And that is whatever the object of consciousness at this moment is. Whether it's something extremely trivial and prosaic, or it's something terrifying and horrible, or it's some kind of divine, wonderful, miraculous vision or occurrence, you treat it all exactly the same. This is just an object of consciousness. You know, it just has this characteristic. So Vipassana really refers to a state of mind, a way of holding the mind. But what are called Vipassana meditation are various sets of techniques for accessing that state of mind. And there has been many of these developed in Burma. You know, you'll hear them called, Vipassana meditation. The two most popular outside of Burma that have spread into other countries are the Mahasi method and the Goenka method. These are techniques, they're methods for accessing that state of pure equanimous awareness. That's what the Vipassana meditation is heading towards and what you should be striving towards. And these two general kinds of meditation, samatha and vipassana, are both really essential for a balanced practice. There are some few extremely gifted individuals that can dispense with samatha practice and just do pure vipassana and get good results. But for most people, the vipassana doesn't work very well unless you've got a solid base in samatha. The mind is just too scattered and confused to be able to do vipassana effectively. So some practice in both from time to time, an alternation of both is a good balanced practice. And as I said, there are many other meditations that don't quite fit these categories. There's a list in the Suddhimagga of 40 meditations, and this couldn't be considered completely comprehensive. There are many more than 40, but these are the 40 traditional classic meditations in the Visuddhimagga. And some of them fall into what we would call perhaps contemplations or reflections. Deliberately using the thinking aspect of mind to reflect on a theme. This is a development of the quality of yoniso manasikara, right attention, as opposed to ayoniso manasikara, which is attention based on the defilements, whereas yoniso manasikara is attention based on the truth, trying to penetrate reality using the thinking quality of the mind. So we have Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, contemplation of the Buddha, contemplation of the Dhamma, and contemplation of the Sangha. These are three of the contemplative meditations given in the Visuddhimagga, and they're traditionally done by considering the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And that chant that we do, a Tipiso chant, lists in Pali the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And you can go through them one by one and contemplate them. There's a contemplation of the Devas, which is considering the various Deva realms and bringing up the contemplation that they're enjoying this wonderful condition of existence due to their karma, as an inducement to yourself to clean up your act and make better karma. And contemplation of virtue is contemplating your own good qualities. I think that's something that even if it's not done as formally as a disciplined meditation, I think it's something good to bring to mind often, because people, I think in our culture, people tend to be very self-critical. Nobody generally, I mean, there are some people who are full of themselves and think they're just wonderful, but most people that you encounter, that nobody would be harder on them than they are themselves. People are very self-critical, and it's good to counteract that by just contemplating from time to time the goodness in yourself, the good qualities, the kindness or generosity or helpfulness, patience. Bring these, give yourself some credit in that way. Another one of these contemplations is Maranasati, contemplation of death, which is given in the Visuddhimagga quite an extensive treatment with various methods of contemplating death, such as contemplating the uncertainty of the time, the uncertainty of the place, the uncertainty of the means. You don't know when you're going to die, where or how. All you know is you're going to die, but you don't know the details. And there's many, many other, approaches, but the whole theme of that chapter and that meditation is to make it real to yourself that I'm going to die, I am mortal. This existence will come to a termination, which is something people try and avoid looking at. I always think of this very elderly lady. She actually lived to be almost 100. She lived to be 99, and she was already well up in her 90s, and she was at a Dhamma talk given by Ajahn Amaro. I was there, and his theme of his talk was impermanence and the inevitability of death. And at the end of the talk, she said to Ajahn Amaro, "Oh, Ajahn, that was such a wonderful talk. It made me really think one day I might die." Then there are a few meditations that you could consider hard to classify as samatha or vipassana because they have some aspect of both. And I'm thinking here particularly of 32 parts of the body. This is a meditation where you go through the specific lists that you can find in numerous places that list the various parts of the body, starting with hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, and going through the internal organs and the various fluids. And they list 32. And you go through them forward and backward, contemplating and visualizing them. So this gives you some insight, detached observation of the nature of the body. But it also becomes a samatha meditation because the recommended procedure is after going through it forward and backward at least once, then you settle on one body part or fluid, whatever that comes to mind clearly, and visualize it and just hold it as an object of samatha. Then there are other meditations that are very useful to practice from time to time as antidotes to specific defilements. The 32 parts of the body is good for attachment to the body. It also helps to break up the sense of self expressed through the body. But a more powerful meditation for overcoming sensuality is contemplation of corpses. Now, this is different than death meditation. You're contemplating the decay and rotting of bodies. And this was done in ancient India quite physically and literally, going to the charnel ground and contemplating decaying corpses. And it's still done to some degree in Thailand. But it can also be done just purely mentally. There's a story I think it's in one of the Vinaya books about when the famous courtesan Ampabali died. She was like highly sought after. It was like the high-class courtesans in ancient India were sort of celebrities. Various towns would compete to have her set up and shop in their town as a tourist attraction. And men would pay 100 kahapanas a night for her services. And she was this famed beauty. And when she died, the Buddha told the king, don't bury Ampabali just yet. Leave her for a week or two. And then have her paraded through the town in a cart. And a crier calling out, who will pay 100 kahapanas for this body? Who will pay 50, 20, 10? Who will pay a farthing? And this is no one wanted it. It's this sensuality of the body is just an illusion based on a temporary set of factors. And it all comes to disgusting, putrid, oozing rot in the end. Right? This is a contemplation of corpses as a way of overcoming sensual lust. Negative emotions like hatred, anger, ill will, they're overcome by the Brahma Viharas, the four divine abidings. Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. Loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And there are different ways of doing these meditations. There's more than one kind of approach, but the idea is to bring up this feeling of metta, well-wishing, or karuna, wish or aspiration that beings do not suffer, or mudita, that they enjoy their success. Upekkha is not so easily done as a formal meditation, although it can be. But those first three are the critical ones, really, for overcoming negativity, hatred, ill will, anger. And one thing I've noticed over the years is that the people who really need to do those meditations have a big resistance to them. If you're an angry, ill-will type, you have a distaste for trying to do metta. The people who really love metta, that's fine, they do it, but they don't really need it. They've got already hearts full of loving kindness. They want to do metta. It's fine, doesn't do them any harm, but it's the angry types that really need it. Or negative. Anger is only one manifestation of that defilement of dosa. Manifests in different ways. One is anger, but also ill will, cynicism, negativity, grumpiness, or ill will as hatred or loathing. Well, these are all manifestations of the same root defilement of dosa, and they're to be overcome with loving kindness or compassion. So it's very good to develop a few of these specific meditations, specific antidotes. So you can add them to your toolkit. They're like medicines that you can use when specific defilements overwhelm the mind. And bring forth one of these contemplations and help to lessen the influence of the defiled state of mind. And finally, to say just a few words about the, let's say the end point or the goal of meditation. What are we doing it for? What's the reason why we take up the practice? There are many different reasons people begin the practice. And one of my teachers used to say that even the motive purifies itself with time. Like people often take up the practice to escape from some heavy suffering in their being, anxiety or depression or this feeling of loss or hopelessness. So you take up meditation to try and escape from that, overcome that. Some people take up meditation with kind of ambitious goals, what Soft sometimes calls spiritual materialism. They're hoping to gain amazing insights into reality or psychic powers or some really exotic states of mind. But the end goal has been called the sure heart's release. It's vimutti, liberation. It's bodhi, awakening. And that is the realization of the unconditioned. Well, that is the real goal and end point, and everything else is a partial goal. It might be worthwhile in itself. I mean, it's worthwhile to have a more peaceful mind. It's worthwhile to develop compassion. These things are useful and good and wholesome just on their own, but they're partial. They're not the end goal. They're not the complete liberation of mind. You have to be careful not to let even nibbana become an object of desire and attachment. For one thing, it's quite foolish because you can't imagine nibbana before you experience it. But on the other hand, then it corrupts the practice if it's driven, if it's goal-oriented. So again, this is a middle path. You have to have the sense in the mind of moving towards this great purity and the great awakening, the path of purification. This is the Visuddhimagga, means path of purification. And the end point being the total purification of the unconditioned. But most of the time you have to focus on what's here and now, immediately in front of you. So I like to compare it to hiking in a rough country, in the hills or the forests. most of the time you have to pay attention to the ground below your feet so you don't stumble into a crevasse or trip on a root. But if that's all you do, you'll just end up wandering in circles and be lost. Every now and again you need to stop and look at the sun, take your bearings, see what direction you're going. One final point, and then I'll think it'll be enough, is to, on a less comprehensive level, it's people often wonder, am I making progress in my meditation? Is my meditation working? Is it doing good? I think the best touchstone for that is how does it affect your mind after the formal meditation? Are you growing more peaceful? Are you feeling more clear? Is your mind less scattered? Do you have less anxiety? Are you more equanimous? Are you able to deal with difficulties more easily? Then you're making progress. You're doing something right. I think that's the best way to judge. Okay, so I think I'll stop at that point.
Sadhu, 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 Anamo